Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Kiddushin daf Yud Tes. We are going to begin on Yud Tes Aleph, about 6 lines from the top. So we were learning when it comes to an Havriya, the din is that the Adon, the master, is able to perform Yud, which is a form of Kiddushin, and he will in essence be married to her. On this, Boy Reish Lakish, he asks a question, Mahu Shemiyayid Adam Livnoi Katan. Beno Amarachmana, Beno Koldahu, Oldima Beno Dumidide, Mahu Gadol, Apeno Gadol. So the Gemara wonders that just like he could do Yid, so also he could give this Amavriya over to his son. Now the question is he able to do this even while his son is a Katan? Do we say that the right of Yid is any Beno, Koldahu, it has to be similar to him. Just like the father obviously is a Gadol. Also over here, it must be, we're talking about that the child has to at least be the age of majority. So that's the kasha. So Omer Rav Zera Tashma. The pasuk says Ish. Now this is by Eishes Ish. There is a prohibition, of course, of committing adultery. And it says Ish. Prat L'katan. It's excluding if the person who committed adultery was a katan. So Asher Yinaf, the pasuk says that he had committed adultery as Eishes Ish, again with a married woman. Pral Eishes Katan excludes if you have a gadol who had bia, who committed adultery with a girl who was an Eishes Katan. Rather, you're talking about a case, the child is a katan, and he's married to a woman. So even though she's a gedola, but since it says Eishes Ish, it's only if it's Eishes Ish, which is mashma, the man has to be at least an Ish. He has to be a gadol. So a person had tashmish with a woman, even though it's adultery, but the husband was a katan, so then in that situation we say he doesn't get the same punishments. Now, if you hold taka that this child can do yud even as a katan, so im kain matzinu ishus katan lekatan, we find their taka is this element of ishus even for a katan, because that's what it's saying, that it's excluding a katan. And if you look in Taisus, he says v'afal gav the katan lav bar oinshinhu. We know that it's partial. You need a pasuk. He's not going to be punished. Since the woman is going to be killed, maybe the child would be killed. This man, no. But again, we have l'chayra a raya that if in fact this kid can do yid, then we find that there actually is ishus l'katan. So we mean, eishes ish prat eishes kayin eishes katan. What do you mean? Well, she should be a full-fledged wife. The Elamai Edumiyid. So therefore you're saying that you can't do Yid when you're a Katan. So might come a might lekra. So then why do you need a pasuk to exclude it? Right? So after all, obviously that means there's no such thing as Kiddushin. If it's not Kiddushin, what do you mean Eishes Ish Pral Eishes Katan? It's not a marriage. So Tishmina D'Miyayid. Pum Fakert. You should learn from here that there is a din yud, because it's saying that who's going to get killed, Eishes Ish, but a man who's a katan, who is married halachically, just like yud, you could halachically do yud even as a katan. It's just the pasuk is saying that there's no din misa, but there should still be then a din kedushin and din yud. So Rav Ashi hacha beyavam, the pasuk is actually being mamayit a katan only with regard to yibum, not with regard to him being married to her, just a regular marriage. Because a child cannot be married to this woman. So what is this pasuk telling you? He had a brother, so the brother died and they were childless, so that this woman, now the Yavama, is zokak to this boy, even though he's a katan. Hacha biyavam ben tesha shan yom echad. He's 9 years old. He already had his 9th birthday. And he actually had bia with his Yavama. The Midarais a Chazile, that Midiraisa, she's fit to him. Says Rashi, Kalimer, Sekukula ba'isa bi'el chol davar. As Rashi says, Ben Teisha Shabal Yevimtai Kana. That the din is brought down in Masechtas Nida. We'll get to that in maybe 5 years from now. That a 9-year-old, as long as he's had his 9th birthday, which is 9 years and 1 day, if he has bia with the Yavama, that's a kinyan. That's considered to be a bia, and therefore it's like they're married. So therefore, Mahu de Teima Kivana Midiraisa Chazile. Since Midiraisa, she's fit to him, Ubia so bia, and if he taka had bia with her, it's considered to be a bia, and therefore they're now like married. So you would think, therefore, she's like a full-fledged woman, a full-fledged wife, and therefore, if a man would have tashmish, commit adultery with her, you would think that you would be mechayev, because it's eshes ish. Kamashmalan, no. So this is a tremendous point, that when it comes to a katan, he doesn't have marriage. He doesn't get married. But his bia is a bia. And therefore, because of that, the din is, if he would be 9 years old, there's already a zika connected to him because of his brother, the bia would be a good bia. And therefore, because of that, the din is that he would technically, they would be married. And therefore, you would think that there would be an Isra Eshes Ish. That's the pasuk. So my Havala. So what exactly is the maskana regarding all this? So Tashma, Amrav Aivu, Amrav Yanai, Ein Yud El Begadol. Yud has to be with a gadol. You have to be an adult. And then he says Ein Yud El Medas. Yid has to be with someone who has das. So Tarti, for Rashi, Hachadhu. It's really the same thing. What are you talking about? Why are you saying these two things? They're the same thing. So Matam Kaimer. Matam Ein Yid El Begadol. Why is it that you cannot do Yid unless you're an adult? Yid El Bedas, because you need das. And therefore this son who is a katan cannot do Yid. The boy say, alternatively, you could say, my medas di da. It has to be with her das, referring to the girl. The Tanya Baya Bered Rabbi Avo. The pasuk says, Asher Yada, they didn't do Yud. Malamich is Sarach Liada. It means that you need to notify her that she is aware. Hu Tani La Hu Aimer La B'Kedushi Yud. This is referring to Kiddushin Yud. The Libra of Yosef Rabbi Huda. The Aimer Moiser Rishainis Lava Kiddushin Nitnu. In other words, the very first money, when the Adon purchased this Havriya, that money does not count as Kiddushin, and therefore he can't just automatically be married to her through Yid. He has to do something else, because that original money is not Kiddushin. Therefore, because of that, it's necessary to inform her of what's going on. Maybe you could actually say that the original monies that were given to her for the purchase of her was for Kiddushin. But Shani Hacha Diyam Rachmani Ya'ada. Since the pasuk says Ya'ada, in that situation, it's a lashon of Deya, which means you still have to let her know. So even though it's true, maybe that the original monies that were given are for Kiddushin, nonetheless, the Gzeres HaKasa tells us that we have to inform them. Okay, let's stop there for 1 second. Let's look at question 7. Ein Yud El Begadol, Ein Yud El Medas, Kasha Dechad Milsehi. It's the same thing. Given the Ein Yud El Medas, so Pshita the Ein Yud El Begadol. So one answer is, you're right, so it's just a matam kaimer. What's the reason in Yid, except for with a gadol? Because Yid has to be with das. Or, my medas tita. It means that she has to be with her knowledge. She has to understand exactly what's going on over here. Okay, question TB 16. Where do we ever find Isha Hakanuya Midaraisa? She's actually married to this guy. Still, there's no din of Eshes Ish. How is that shaykh that we could find such such a situation. And it's based on the Gemara we just said, Hacha biyavam ben tesha shanim v'yoim echad habal yavimtai askinan, that the din is that even though midiraisa they're halachically married, nonetheless we'll still say TB 16 that there's no din eshes ish, only because of the Gzeres HaKosav, because of the pasuk. Let's see what he writes. Question 16. TB 16 says, Katan ben tesha shanim al yavimtai kanul chol davar. See Rashi. V'kral mamayit lo mechayiv eshes ish. Because it's just Gzeres HaKosav, but otherwise they're married regarding all other matters. Okay. So again, there's a machlokus whether or not the original monies were taka given over for Kiddushin or not. Okay. When Rabbi Yosi and Rabbi Yehuda hold that the original monies are lava Kiddushin nitnu. On this, the Gemara continues, Ma Rabbi Yosi and Rabbi Yehuda. What exactly is this statement of Rabbi Yosi and Rabbi Yehuda? Nesanya. Ya'ada, it says that there's a din of yud, vehefta, and then there is an element of redemption. So Shar Shehei Shoyis B'yoyim Kedei Padiyah. So there has to be enough time in the day in order to be able to have her, for her to be able to be redeemed. Which means that we know that there's this concept that there's Gir and Kesef, that you could always buy yourself out of slavery before the time which you were supposed to go free anyway. You could leave earlier if you pay. Now, that's great, but what happens when it comes to Yud? So the din is, it has to be Yad of Hefta. At the time that you do Yud, there has to have been an ability for her to have at least been able to have done Padiyah. Which means there had to have been, it couldn't be, let's say, the exact second before she goes free. There had to have been some time that was left over, which has some monetary value. So that's how he interprets this. Yad of Hefta Sar Shehei Shoyis B'yoyim Kedei Padiyah. Mekadam Rabbi Yosi Rabbi Yehuda Im Yesh Shoyis B'yoyim Kedei Lasos Imo Sheva Pruta Mekadeshes. If there's enough time that there was a Sheva Pruta worth of work, if you will, then it would be a marriage. It must be the original money is not for Kiddushin, because if it was, then it should kick in even at the very last second. The truth is, no, it doesn't make any difference. Even if you hold that the original monies are for Kiddushin, therefore it shouldn't necessarily be necessary that there should be a Sheva Pruta left, and therefore he'll be able to marry her during that last moment. No, there's a Gzeres HaKosav that just Pashut says the hefta, and therefore she still has to have that amount of time before Yid to do Yid before she's freed. Says Rashi, Mois Rishaynis Lav Kedushin Itnu Di Kibul Av Almanas Lisyayid. Let's say the father accepted upon himself this whole notion that she should marry this master, the Kedushi Yud Tuluyin Ba'av, and it's connected to the father. Afagav Deleka Shayis, even if there's no time left. Nami Kivandi Amr B'Tach Sheish, it was within that 6-year period. That's the time of Yud. So Tisyayidli Havi Le Yud L'Mafreya Mishas Mechira. It would be Yud all the way back L'Mafreya. So therefore, again, that may be one way of reading it, or we say no, the pasuk says the hefta, and therefore it doesn't make any difference. The din still is that you have to do this at a certain time before it's too late. You can't just wait till the last second. Omer Rabbi Rav Nachman, Omer Adam Ubita Katana. A person says to his young daughter, "Si go out, the kabli kedusha saich, and mimakabel your kedushin." Rabbi Yosi Rabbi Yehuda, based on the opinion of Rabbi Yosi Rabbi Yehuda, which again, according to Rabbi Yosi Rabbi Yehuda, holds the original money is not for Kiddushin. So Lavam Rabbi Yosi Rabbi Yehuda, Moisei Rishon Eslav Kiddushin, it knew again the original money for the Mechira is not connected to the marriage. V'chim Mishayir Ba Sheva Pruta, and if she has a Sheva Pruta left of work, Havi Keddushi, so it's Kiddushin, it is really her consent. Therefore, that she has the choice to accept a Kiddushin. Hachanami Lushna. Yom Rabba Rav Nachman Avkadosh B'Milva you're mekadesh someone with a loan, sheshul mashka, which has collateral, mukadeshes Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. Lava Rabbi Yehuda Moiser Rishaynois Lava Kiddushin. It knew that the original monies were not for the sake of Kiddushin. So Hay Halvahi, it's like a loan. The he gufa mashkanhi, and she is comparable to like collateral, like a mashkon. She's the mashkon, and there's a loan because all this work needs to be taking place. So we continue Testament base. V'chim is shire b'shever pruta. So if there's a pruta left of her work, miyayid, and he does yid at that point, have Kiddushin, hakanami loshna. Taraban. Ketzad mitzvah yid. Exactly how does yid take place? So Amar lo b'fnei shnayim, the master says in front of two people, Hariyat mukudeshesli, Hariyat merasesli. He uses these different languages. Yafil b'sayv sheish, even if it's at the very end of the 6 years, Yafil samach hashkei sachama, even if it's right before the last moment, v'nohig ba minhag ishus, v'nohig ba minhag shivchus. At that point, he should be treating her as a wife and not as a shivcha. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda Omer, Imi Shois B'Yoim K'di Lasos Moshe Aprut M'Kadeshas Nim Lavid M'Kadeshas. Says no, you can't just wait to Shkia Sacham like the last second before she goes free. Then there has to be at least a Sheva Pruta left of work. Mashal, it's comparable. Omer Isha, a person who says to a woman, Hiskachli Mi'achshav Li'achashoshim Yoim. Marry me now and then shloishim yom. So it's questionable. Achshav is today or after 30 days. So since he said this, someone came within those 30 days. She's married to the first person because he said achshav. Mashal aman. Ilay mashal Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. He says that it's all totally on the end game, because he holds that the original money was not for Kiddushin. Therefore, so too, if you would say Me'achshav, even though you said Me'achshav, why would we say she's going to be married to the first guy, right? Maybe she's not linked to the first statement, rather to the second. So, Amar Rabba, Derava, Mashal Rabbanon. The Mashal is like the Rabbanon. Says Rashi, Afil in Shais, even if there's no time left in the day. Tiksavri Lakach Nitna Moisari Shainais. That's why he gave her those original money, the original money which was given over for that the Adon gave to the father when he sold her. That was also for Yid, for Kiddushin, and therefore you don't need to. You could wait till the last minute because the original monies were for Kiddushin. The Pshit, Tismadatema, Halo Amarle Mi'achshav Kamashmuan. Since he didn't say Ma'achshav, so in that situation maybe it doesn't work. You actually have to specify for it to actually have kicked in retroactively. Tani idach hamaychres bitai. A person sells his daughter, the halach, and he goes v'kitchel acher, and she marries someone else. So sichik ba'adain, so she could literally laugh at the master. Umukadeshus l'sheni di Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, because again the first marriage, the first action, we say is not for Kiddushin, and therefore she marries someone else. So then she's married to him. No, he actually could do yid because it's connected to the original action, because Mois Rishonis is for Kiddushin. So Mashal Oimel Isha Hariyam Mukadeshus Li'achashloishim. You're married to me after 30 days. Someone came within those 30 days. She's married to the second guy. Which means that's connected to the original action. Over here, we're saying she's connected to the second thing. Maybe in the situation, since he didn't say 30 days, it will be different. Upasak al manas shlo yayid, and he says, I'm selling you my daughter. However, it's on condition. Actually, hold off 1 second. Let's look at this Rashi. So it says, Ma'odatema holo armela b'shas matn mois. At the time when he gave over the money, al manas shetisiyidli, that on condition you marry me l'achar zman, after a certain amount of time. Rabbi Yosef married to the second one. You say you're married to me after 30 days. Fine. That was the first part. Okay, let's go weiter. So you sold your daughter. However, I do not want you to marry my daughter. So Niskayim Hatanai de Rameir says that Taka works. She's sold, but this Adon cannot do Yid. No, he has no right to say such a thing. There's a concept of Yid. After all, you're not allowed to go against a condition, which is from the Torah. The Torah says that an Adon who acquires this woman as a slave, he has certain rights, and one of them is he could do Yid to her. He could marry her. So therefore, you don't have a right to be able to make a Tanai, which goes against, which is against what's in the Torah. So, Rameir Tanai Kayim, is it possible to say that Rameir holds this? You can make such a condition. Pasanya, you say to a woman, I'm going to marry you, and I'm a great guy, but it's on condition I don't give you anything. I'm not giving you clothes, no intimacy, no food, nothing. So Harizam Kadesh is the Tanai Batan of Rameir. Rameir clearly says that it's a good Kiddushin, but the point is that his Tanai means nothing because he's Masnamak Shekasa B'Torah. The Torah requires that a man, when he marries a woman, he has to provide for her Sher Ksusavana. He has to provide these things. So if you make such a condition, the condition means nothing because you're going against what the Torah says. You can't make a condition against what the Torah requires of you. So too over here, L'charish say the same thing. How could the person say, I'm going to sell my daughter to you on condition you don't do Yid? What do you mean? There's a concept of Yid. So that's going to be the Kashna Rameir. Yehuda Aimer b'davar shebamamon tanaykayim. So Amar Chizkiya shani hachad yamar kra l'alma. It says that she could be an alma of Riyah, a slave, which means pa'amim she'enu meichra el alma bilvad. You're right. Normally, he holds that anyone who's Masa, Masha, Kosa, Torah, Tanai is Batal. But the Torah also tells you that there are times that Yid does not have to take place and the condition would work. Rabbanan Hailu Amamaya, by the way. The Rabbanan who say that this Tanai means nothing. So what does he do with the word Amma? So Hamiboilahu L'Asayni. He needs it for the following. L'Amma, the fact says L'Amma is Molamid Shemaychu L'Psulim. That you're allowed to sell her to someone who's a apostle, says Rashi, to a mamzer, a nisin, who she'in rishayli yayid. They're not allowed to do yid. Ve'enu nimcheres lehem el shivchas bovad. So obviously they're only being sold, this woman's only being sold to be a shivcha, not for yid, because she's not shaykh to the yid, because lo yovo mamzer v'kahal Hashem. So it's a great chiddush. The pasuk tells you that when it comes to a psul, you're allowed to still sell her to them, even though it's not shaykh to do yid. But that's what it's coming to tell you. We have a kabel chaimer. If he has the right to, or someone does have the ability to mekadosh himself to apostle, says Rashi, the Kiddushin Tyson b'chavi lavin. If we're dealing with a case of a lav, loy yavoy b'kal Hashem. So if you marry her, so it's it is typhus. So lo yimcharen l'psulim. So understand, im yimkachel l'psulim, lo yimcharen l'psulim. After all, if you can't, if we allow you to marry apostle, so lo yimcharen l'psulim, so you should certainly be able to sell them to apostle. In other words, why would you need a pasuk to tell you that you could do such a thing? So ma l'mekadshel l'psulim. When it comes to marrying apostle, shechein adam mekadesh es bito kashi naira. A person can be mekadesh his daughter to apostle even while she's still a naira, while she's already that age. When it comes to selling, the din is you cannot sell her when she's a naira, because at that point she is someone who will present simanim, and therefore she's going to be free. So in other words, we don't have this kal v'chomer, because the truth is, when it comes to Kiddushin, we're more lenient. So fine, you can marry apostle. We also allow the father to marry her off as a naira. However, when it comes to mechira, you can't do that. You can't sell her as a naira. So therefore, also, maybe you cannot sell her as apostle. That's why I need the pasuk. Okay. Rabbi Lezer Omer imu lamed shamach l'psulim. If the whole pasuk is coming to tell you can sell her to apostle, hark for namar. The morning pasuk says, "Im rab eni adoneha." If it's bad in in the eyes of her master. Shira b'nisueha. It means that it's bad with marriage. Says Rashi, shesurla, that she's usher to this guy. Nonetheless, the pasuk says that shelo yadam mekan shemach l'psulim. So ma talmud learn amma. Malamed comes to tell you shemachra, as we continue to daf chafam and alf, l'kroivim, that she's able to be sold to kroivim. Obviously, krovim, a relative, you can't do yid, you can't marry your relative, but nonetheless, it's a good mechira. Velo dinhu imarch l'psulim loyim charen l'kroivim. Understand, if you can be sold to a puzzle, why would you think you can't be sold to a karov? So you have malo meichra l'psulim. When it comes to being sold to a puzzle, she'im ratzel yayid miyayid. Technically, even though you're not supposed to marry them because it's a lav, but it would work. But when it comes to your relative, maybe not, because you're definitely not allowed to marry them. There's definitely no allowance of yid. So maybe there's also no allowance of selling them to a karv. So we actually have two different ways to read l'ama. It's either telling you can sell her to a karov, or you can sell her to a puzzle. Rameir says the whole notion of apostle, he learns out the same thing as Rabbi Lezer. Hitaka will hold like the other shita, that you're not allowed to sell your daughter to a karov. One place says you can sell it to the father and not to the son. You can't sell to either of them. You can't sell to a father, to a son. That's like the Rabbanan, who says you can't sell to a karov. Come on. It's hard to understand. What do you mean? You can sell them to the father, but not to a son. Lo Rabbanan, because the Rabbanan say you can't sell them at all. Can't sell to any karov. Lo Eliezer, who does allow you to sell to a karov. So if it's like the Rabbanan, understand the Rabbanan say you can never sell it to a karov. So how could it possibly be you can sell it to your father? But they will be lenient as long as there's a tzad yud, then that's enough that they could actually be sold. What's a tzad yud? So we'll look at Rashi. When she's sold to the father, and there's a son, so this is the brother's daughter. So in other words, like this, as we started the daf with, the adon doesn't necessarily have to be the one who does yid. He could have his son do yid. So even though he cannot do yid because he's the father, but he could give this girl over to his son. That's something which is okay, which is bas achiv. This is your brother's daughter, right? That's something in which is allowed. So therefore, since there's a sad yid, that even though the father can't do yid, but he can give her over, therefore, that's the reason why it is allowed. I'm going to stop here. Let's look at a couple of questions. Question 8. Ki macher ishas bito la'ama. What do you mean to an amma? Pamim shein marcha el ba'ama b'vad. Sometimes you only have to sell her as an amma. Hemish gachas law. How do we find a marcha l'shivchus b'vad? How do we find only for shivchus and not for yud? So the answer is 3 possibilities. Either you made a condition and he said almanas that you cannot do yud, or it's coming to tell you selling her to a karov or selling her to a puzzle. So those are the 3 possible situations. Okay, TA 16. Madua sarach shehei shais b'yoyim. Why do you need to have time during the day? This is going to be a Testament base. Why do you need to have time during the day? K'dei shiz yayid. So one answer is because you hold, actually this is your Testament Aleph, that one shot is because mois rishaynos, the original monies are not for Kiddushin, or alternatively maybe it is, however it's based on a Gezeres HaKasav. Let's look at TA 16. He says, even if you hold mois Kiddushin, mois rishonis is for Kiddushin, but since it's Gezeres HaKasav, it says v'hefta, so therefore it comes to tell you that you still need shois b'yoyim. Ad kan.